We need to save our kids so that a 13-year-old isn't being tricked by a 50-year-old creep. We need to protect our kids from boosted content from bots and trolls. And on TikTok, where adversarial, countries are trying to manipulate the thought and whole ideas that a 13-year-old has in their head. We need user ID verification. We need laws about, protecting users 13 to 18. We need laws, and we need voluntary, companies. If Facebook says 13 or over to get on, but if I'm a 9-year-old kid, all I have to do is tell them I'm 32 and I'm on.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's crazy. And even the new voluntary Instagram rule, to help teens register, and it's all voluntary. It's all BS. It's a smoke screen.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Hi there, everybody. This is Mark Verbenkov, and welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. This is episode number 167, and today we are returning to what I think is a very interesting discussion and a very interesting topic that deals with how social media is impacting different aspects of society. And it's, of course, a very relevant conversation today. So I'm recording this on November the 8th. We just finished the U.S. elections, which I'm sure all of you listening were paying attention to in some capacity or otherwise. But we've touched on social media and its impact on society in the past. But of course, this is more relevant because of the U.S. elections and how social media, which many people have been discussing lately, how it impacts the discourse and kind of the overall movement of democracy. We'll touch on things of like bots and trolls, or free speech versus moderation, or kind of this ever-present idea of misinformation and malinformation, and how potentially the internet is bringing about more information to other people who didn't have access to that information before, right? So it's a mix of good and bad things that social media brings about, but also there's the I guess you could say the ever-present concern about social media's impact on mental health, and of course how that relates to children. And then, of course, there is my favorite discussion point, which is how any of these technologies are going to be impacting the future. So we definitely get into that with my guest, Mark Weinstein, today in the episode. So Mark Weinstein is a pretty knowledgeable guest to have on the podcast. He was actually involved in the entire internet revolution and is kind of one of the early pioneers in social media and social network creation. So he actually brings about what I think is a very interesting point, very interesting insights to listen to about actually the history of Web 1 and how there were certainly a lot of more positive thoughts about how the internet, as it was being shaped, could bring about positive solutions and impacts and ideas to many people across the world. And that has, of course, changed substantially as Mark gets into with, I guess you could say the de-evolution into this current contemporary surveillance capitalism system that we're in. But, we also talk about some of the likely solutions that are out there and how Mark has been involved in those. And then, as I mentioned, right, of course, how the future of social media will look like and how it will impact society. So it's great to have Mark on. So a quick introduction about Mark. He is a world-renowned tech entrepreneur, contemporary thought leader, privacy expert, and one of the visionary inventors of social networking. His adventure in social media has lasted over 25 years through 3 award-winning personal social media platforms enjoyed by millions of members worldwide. He is also the author of a new book called Restoring Our Sanity Online, which presents the bold and revolutionary framework for an epic reboot in social media. So what would social media look like if it nourished our critical thinking, mental health, privacy, civil discourse, and of course, democracy, if all of this is even possible. So we do touch on a number of the concepts and insights in the book today. Quite insightful knowledge on kind of where Web 1 came about, Web 2, now we're moving into Web 3, and then what he hopes Web 4 will look like. But I'm not going to talk too much more about that. I'll leave that up to Mark Weinstein to discuss in the episode. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Well, hi there, Mark. Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. I'm glad that we were finally able to connect and make this happen. I think that the conversation, it's not just important, but it's kind of essential given the context of the elections. We're recording this on the 1st of November, right? So it's just a couple days away for your country's, what I would say, a pretty crazy election. And I'm glad that we're going to be talking about, social media and how it's impacting that and many other things. So great to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Mark. And, it's great to be here. And for our listeners, we'll be talking, sort of pre and post-election today. So don't worry if you're seeing this and it's later in November or, a totally different date. It will all be relevant.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of the concepts here we could call like evergreen, right? The social media platforms aren't going away anytime soon. So the ideas and concepts and maybe even some of the solutions are going to be relevant forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big project, right? And we'll get there, right? Yeah.
Well, Mark, how did you get involved in this world of understanding social media, how it's impacting us, how it's impacting discourse and mental health, and some of the things that we'll get in today? If you want to give us, maybe an idea of like something that brought you into it that was interesting at the beginning, or was there an event, or it was just kind of fate that brought you into this very interesting and wild world?
It's such an interesting question. There's two events. One event that brought me into Web 1 and one event that brought me into Web 2, sort of back. For our listeners and viewers, Web 1 was this really idyllic, altruistic, really pure capitalist moment, and I'm considered one of the inventors of social media. There are many of us, probably 100 of us around the world, having the idea at the same time and starting what were then called community portals in the late 1990s. The idea for me was born from a hike in 1997 on a family vacation with my then 10-year-old nephew. And at that point, we could already live around the world and work where we wanted to and travel everywhere. And email was the technology of the day. So, unfortunately, email is still with us, but email was really ghastly in the late 90s and it hasn't changed. It's one-dimensional. It's still here. So, in the course of this, it was like, Uncle Marky, wouldn't it be great if we could? And then my nephew and I started talking about what we wanted to do to stay in touch as a family when we were all living around the world. And 10 minutes into the conversation, I had one of those feelings. And, maybe you've had these feelings that our listeners where you got to do something, you're going to do it. And I looked at my nephew and I said to him, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to give you 10% of what I own. It was just so right. And this was the vision that we all had. Everybody who was in Web 1, it was all about the pure form of capitalism is creating great products for customers, delighting them, and then they'll, be your customer. And this was really about creating connectivity, using all the great new technology at our fingertips, videos and, all the great stuff that we could do, the chat rooms and everything else that we could do. We had like a fridge, you put sticky notes on it. So I started superfamily.com and superfriends.com. And they became PC Magazine top 100 sites 3 years in a row, because this was the beginning. And, it was so exciting. It was so much fun. And, there was also the new economy at that time. It was all about getting as many, quote, eyeballs. We didn't call people users then. It was all about eyeballs.
Right.
It was all about members, how many numbers, but it's how many eyeballs could you get? And that was the new economy because nobody really knew how we were going to make money doing this. And the investors didn't care. The investors cared about how many users, how many eyeballs you could attract to your service. And we were great at it. So that's how it starts. We won awards, and as I said, PC Magazine Top 100 3 years in a row. And so that's how it started. And for everybody, Web 1 was really great. If you were in it as an entrepreneur, it was so exciting. It doesn't have a good ending. Because what happens is, in the middle of all of our companies, everybody involved, doing exactly what the investors wanted, and investors were throwing money. It was so easy to raise money. And the idea was, we'll figure out how to monetize later, get your customer base. And then all of a sudden in 2001, the emotions of investing shifted. There were a lot of articles about, wait a minute, no one's making any money, there's no revenue, and investors panicked. There was a total panic. When you read about the bubble bursting in 2001, it was an investor panic, and thousands of companies went out of business, including ours, because you couldn't survive without investor capital because they didn't care about revenue, they cared about eyeballs, and overnight you couldn't turn into revenue to support your system. So Web 1 washes out. But that's how it all started, and it was just amazing. We had 70 team members. We built the largest commercial server infrastructure in New Mexico. I did it in New Mexico. The state government, gave us grants because they had let Bill Gates go when he had asked for grants years earlier, and they remembered. Anyway, now, fast forward to my second foray. Now I'm going to explain Web 2 very quickly.
Yeah, please.
Web 2 is really simply the rise of surveillance capitalism. So Web 2 is the ad model with targeting, with, taking all your data, with reading everything about you and manipulating your thoughts, your opinions, and your purchase decisions. So Web 2 comes around, 2004, Facebook starts. MySpace is already there. MySpace is gathering steam. Friendster is like, on its way in and on its way out. It doesn't have a long trajectory. Everybody from Web 1 is washed out. But MySpace comes in with a great product. And I bet a bunch of you watching or listening, you guys, yeah.
Yeah, myself as well. Yeah.
But MySpace, and this was so obvious to me because I had already been in the community space. MySpace was missing a very important piece. MySpace had what I call the me. So you could get everybody to come over to your room, to your, but they missed the we. Where, and that was really critical. This is why Facebook ate MySpace's lunch. So MySpace went from, Rupert Murdoch bought it, I don't know, in 2007 or whatever it was for, $700 million. And in 2010, I think he sold it for $35 million. So I might have the years wrong, everybody, but the dollar figures are pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Because MySpace never pivoted. That was a huge mistake. They just, remember when you start a company, everybody, and especially because we're talking future tech, don't be myopic. Because that's what MySpace was, myopic. They put the blinders on and they thought they had it right. And then, they didn't understand the world of competition and the world of what I call the we. That there was way more to social media than me. And voila, Facebook eats their lunch. And then 2010, Mark Zuckerberg, who's flying high on Facebook, they're a private company in 2010, remember that. But they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars. So they're building a huge firewall, already. And the monopolistic power of Facebook is growing exponentially. And he's interviewed at the Crunchy Awards in San Francisco, and he happens to say casually, privacy is a social norm of the past. Because data, he already recognized data is everything. Google had recognized it. Mark Z recognized it with Facebook. It's like, data is everything. Data is how you make the most money. So the more effective you are at spying on people and collecting their data and hiring, data analysts and psychologists to figure out exactly how to manipulate them, and then giving your advertisers, marketers, and political operatives exactly the audiences they're looking for because because of the data ecosystem, because of your data packets. So I was watching this interview and my jaw dropped. I was like, most of us have ancestors who fought in wars, or, people that are alive, grandparents, aunts and uncles, parents. And, they fought for the freedom of democracy. And part of democracy is the right to privacy. That's part of why, America declared independence from the British, because the British were, the soldiers were, camping in the colonist homes, and there was no privacy. So for Mark Zuckerberg to decide for his wallet that privacy was dead, was just a spectacularly bold and arrogant statement. And I endeavored right there and then that I would come back. So, this time I had to move to Silicon Valley because you couldn't build a company, in Albuquerque, or really successfully. Maybe you could go to New York, you could go to, California at that point, Silicon Valley. I moved to Silicon Valley. I started a beta project for Web 2, imagineering a whole new kind of social network that didn't have ads, didn't have boosted content, that was based on what's called a freemium model, where what people loved was free, and then they could upgrade, add, a la carte features and services and fun things. And MeWe was born. This was, the most recent company I started in 2016, MeWe. We ran a beta project for several years to get people's feedback, and had a privacy bill of rights, all kinds of things. So MeWe was born. Now, I left MeWe. So MeWe, I successfully ran MeWe through 2021. We started to build out the revenue model that seemed to be working. We had a subscription model on top of a la carte ways for people to upgrade, and also people could donate. The revenue was catapulting. I left it in 2021. A new team came on board. And I left it because the problem isn't solved. And so, so that's Web 2, surveillance capitalism. And I left it because the problem wasn't solved. And I'm here, Mark, with you today because the last 2 years, I've been writing how we solve the problem in every aspect: bots and trolls, kids' mental health, civil discourse, democracy, critical thinking. And the book is out now. It's published by Wiley, called Restoring Our Sanity Online. And it's endorsed by the inventor of the World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and by Woz. You guys all know Woz. Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple. Both of them say it's a vital, critical must-read. Tim says it aligns with his vision for the future, and it's how we solve it. And we're all in this together, everybody. You're a user. We can't avoid social media, and even if we're off it, I got news for you. They're tracking you anyhow.
Yeah, that's a good but also scary way of thinking about this whole Web 2 idea. And as we were discussing before the recording, I think that maybe it's vital for us to discuss some of the actual issues beyond this surveillance capitalism, or that's tangentially connected to surveillance capitalism, because I'm having conversations with interesting and intelligent and experienced people all the time, but I know that a lot of my listeners are also consuming podcasts, but they're not fully aware of what's actually going on, right? So we may have heard about self-harm or certain kind of things that maybe more teenage type people do to themselves due to being on Instagram for too long, or having this dislike or distrust of other people because we're forced to look at the other side as kind of almost inhuman, or Nazis, or whatever these terms that are being thrown around. But I think that there's many other things that are connected to this. And maybe one final thing here, like I remember when I first got on Facebook in late or early 2008, and I went traveling. Like I finished university, I went traveling in Latin America, and it was phenomenal because I would post things on my Facebook page, pictures of Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras or whatever, and all of my friends and all of my family would be able to see every single post. And it was, I can't remember when it was, a year later, 2 years later, where there was some sort of algorithm that was built into it that you weren't able to see everybody's posts anymore. I still remember the days where I would post something, my friends and family would see it. that's not how it is anymore. That we were forced some kind of new ideas in order to trigger some sort of maybe early emotional reaction in order for us to engage more with the platform. And I think for me anyways, that was when, I kind of stopped using the damn thing. But I think that's the early trend of moving us into a lot of these problems that we should get into. I don't know where we should start. Should it be mental health maybe, because this is something that is, I guess, impacting all of us. As I said before, it's November 1st. I think the world's going a little bit crazy with this election. So maybe we can touch on mental health and then move into the election stuff if you want.
Well, and Mark, the way you described it, everybody, that's exactly what happened. So, and MeWe, by the way, had, timeline order newsfeed, which I'm a firm believer in, which I advocate for all the time, with no boosted content. So you see, if you're following somebody or you're connected to your brother, sister, mother, father, best friend, whoever, and you see everything they post. That, by the way, that leads to very good engagement. But what happened, you're right, is, and this is how we get to where we are today. So first there was timeline order newsfeed. So everybody saw you posted. It was delightful. It was great.
Yeah.
And then Facebook realized that they can make more money by curating, because their algorithm was a learning algorithm that was learning, what posts you spent the most time with and what, topics and what images you seem to enjoy the most. It was all about your eyeballs on the screen. And then they wanted to manipulate that so that they could get you. Because remember, the longer you're on the screen, on the app, the more money they make. More ads they can serve you, more content that's being boosted and paid for. It's all, whether it's an ad or content, if it's boosted, then, they're making money. And they all of a sudden they became massively profitable, and it got creepy. Now listen, it gets creepy before it starts screwing around with democracy. I was interviewed the day before Facebook went public in 2012 on Fox Business, because they wanted some pundit to say, wait a minute, this is not all perfect. I said, look, it's creepy. If I say I got to go to the store and get dog food, 10 seconds later, there's a dog food ad, and it's the kind of dog food that I buy. That's out of control, weird. And people, it seems convenient for a lot of people right now, because at first it was convenient for a lot of people. They were like, oh, it's cool. It knows what I want. Then it became creepy for all of us. So,
yeah. I was just going to say, like, I experience this all the time. And I know that, in all of my network, there's always this like, weren't we talking about this product last week? Like, I wasn't even searching for it. You were telling me about it, and now it's popping up on my phone. Like, this is something where I think distrust in a lot of these platforms is growing over time because of these, retargeting campaigns, or like, oh, is my phone actually listening to me all the time? And then it's telling me, but it's
Yes, it is. Guys, everybody, if you got Meta on your phone, I don't care which product it is, they're listening all the time.
Yeah.
It's that's just how it is. And, you could talk. I remember once a couple of years ago doing an experiment with a friend of mine. And so we put the phone down, and, we had met, we were logged in, but and we talked about friends we hadn't seen in a while. And when you know it, the next day, Facebook is pinging us and saying, hey, you want to be friends with this person? That we're like, wait a minute, So, and today you fast forward to where we are. So AI has come in.
Yeah.
So we always had algorithms, which were really artificial intelligence anyhow, but it wasn't as quick learning. AI learns in nanoseconds, which is why now, literally every interview I have, somebody, like the interviewer will say to me, I know this older person, I know my father, I know my mother, who's like hooked on Twitter now, or hooked on, because AI is so smarter, and so whatever it is, TikTok, the AI is so smart now that it knows so much about you, and it learns so fast. It does A/B testing literally in nanoseconds with your eyes, with your brain. It can anticipate your thoughts and anticipate exactly what you want before you know it. And that's why it's like heroin. You are totally hooked.
Yeah.
Totally hooked. And so are our kids. But what happens is it also recognizes how to get the content that others are paying for. So in other words, if you got this outrageous content from bots and trolls or nefarious actors, but they're paying, because they're paying Meta, because you can pay to target anybody or anything. And so the AI knows exactly who to target with that, how to manipulate your thoughts to get you ready to look at it, how to get you outraged when you look at it, how to get you to take an action when you look at it. Same thing with, products and services, purchase decisions. So it's completely out of control. And so, and this is where we get to this question about, the civil discourse, the elections, and civil discourse all the time, because we see it now all the time. It doesn't matter if there's election next week or next year or last week. Here's the thing, everybody. We don't really hate each other. But social media, bots and trolls, manipulated targeting, artificial intelligence have really fostered the culture of hate amongst us. In democracy, the backbone of democracy is disagreement. And so it's playing on that, take it to a level, because the backbone of democracy is not hate. It's not distrust. It's trusting disagreement. It's civil discourse. Great. You can like Trump and you can like Harris. Now, the way it was until very recently, those two don't hate each other. It's a conversation. We're allowed to have different opinions. We respect the power of the vote. Today, we're living in a culture where the power of the vote is being questioned, not only by people running for office, but, the bots and trolls from adversarial countries are purposely trying to disrupt democracy. This is well documented. You see in the news every day, another discovery of, another bot and troll farm from, a foreign adversary that's involved in trying to disrupt, or steal data or target. It's unbelievable. So civil discourse, critical thinking, and democracy are in the crosshairs, and we've got to get this fixed quickly.
Yeah, I'm almost 39, and I remember when, like, my family's maybe a little bit more conservative, and I was, maybe a little bit more liberal when I was younger. And I certainly remember having engaging discussions around the family dinner table when, aunts and uncles or grandparents would come over, and there would be a mix of, not conservative and Democrats, but, liberal and conservative minded people. Now, whether it's my family or other families, like, politics is just off the menu. You just cannot talk about it because it seems like people flare up really quickly whenever one thing is mentioned on one side or the other. And I'm not saying there's no opportunity for discourse anymore, but it's certainly gotten strained compared to where it was, 15, 20 years ago or something like that. And it's this social media. And I think people are aware of it, generally speaking, right? At a vague level, people are aware, okay, like the strife that all of our societies are experiencing is being fostered by this, as you were saying, whether it's bot farms or whether it's the hyper focus on the other aspect of whatever it is that you're interested in, that an AI is pushing on you, right? It triggers you, therefore you get some sort of emotional reaction, therefore you're more engaged in the content that you're looking at, therefore you spend more time on the platform, you're given more ads, and Meta makes more money. So I think that this is
and then your mental health.
Yeah.
Out the window.
Yeah, can we touch on that a little bit? Yeah. Please go ahead.
What you just described is interesting, because you take a normal, sane, calm human being, and unfortunately, it's sort of like this is like a drug. The screen is a drug, okay? And so then it hooks you, and then like you said, at first it hooked you on, great, my family, my friends,
yes,
what everybody's doing, this is so much fun, and here's what I'm doing, or there was that idea that for a period of time our lives looked like a facade because everybody had this great life, right? There was that era of Facebook, and it's still there.
Yeah.
Where, people aren't posting about their issues or problems, which, by the way, is a good idea. Don't, because your future, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, your future employers, your current employers. Everybody's going to get that and see that forever, and it will impact your life. So, save those for off the screen. But what's happened is also now a bot and troll can get a blue check on X because they all have access to, the bots and trolls are funded by adversarial countries with millions and millions of dollars. A bot and a troll can be programmed to use a credit card just as easily as a human being. So it's easy for a bot and troll to, sort of claim a fake identity, but to associate that identity with a credit card. And boom, you get a blue check. Now your posts get boosted, et cetera. And so, and of course, then you can pay even more to boost. It's so out of control. But now everybody, listen, this is totally fixable. Totally fixable. And, Mark, if you don't mind, I want to roll into my background as one of the world's leading privacy advocates, because I have come to a stunning realization, and I write about it in the book, and I want to tell our listeners. So, first of all, I am one of the world's leading privacy advocates. I have been for many years. I've been ranked in one of the top. I've been given awards by the Canadian government. Gave me a lovely award as Privacy by Design Ambassador. And this was a great award by the Privacy Commissioner, Ann Kabukian, when she was the Privacy Commissioner. But so I've been on, committees, and initiatives by the U.S. government, to create user identification systems. And I'm the guy in all those meetings who said, you guys are crazy. This is lunacy. We don't want to know who everybody is. We don't want, throw this out. People need their privacy. So fast forward to 2024, 2025. I have news for all of us. They already know who we are. So it's time for us, and me, myself included, to stop taking a stand that, there shouldn't be a user ID verification system because we want our privacy. Guys, that level of privacy is over. The government knows who we are. They know who you are. The marketers know who we are. They know who you are. Meta knows who you are. Google knows who you are. The data ecosystem knows who you are. The dark web knows who you are. They already know who you are when you get online. They already know where you live. They know who you are. They know what you do. They know who your friends are. They already know it all. So let's stop pretending that we need that. What's happening is the anonymity online is causing all the problems. Bots and trolls, we don't know, they have no real identity. So what we must move to now is what I've fought against for years, but now I realize it's time. We need to save our kids so that a 13-year-old isn't being tricked by a 50-year-old creep. We need to protect our kids from boosted content from bots and trolls. And on TikTok, where adversarial, countries are trying to manipulate the thoughts and the whole ideas that a 13-year-old has in their head. We need user ID verification. We need laws about, protecting users 13 to 18. We need laws, and we need voluntary, companies. If Facebook says 13 or over to get on, but if I'm a 9-year-old kid, all I have to do is tell them I'm 32, and I'm on.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's crazy. And even the new voluntary Instagram rule, to help teens, to, register. And it's all voluntary. It's all BS. It's a smoke screen. So it's time for user ID verification. Just very simple. The financial services industry already has mastered this. So it doesn't have to be a government that does it, but it has to be a government-approved system where you can really verify your user. And guess what will happen? User ID verification with AI used in a positive way, boom. We can eradicate bots and trolls. We can get back, give us, over a period of time, we can get back to civil discourse. We can protect kids. There's United States, there's a legislative initiative called the Kids Online Safety Act and COPPA 2. Both have passed the Senate bipartisan. So there's things we can do. Never mind, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the book. By the way, the book is Restoring Our Sanity Online, but it's filled with, you know, you can see this in the reviews. I have a sense of humor. And apparently, so do the social media companies, because they have done hilarious things that you might not be aware of. So you're going to, people write, when they're writing reviews, they're like, this is funny. And it is. There's so much tongue-in-cheek in here while I take you through webs 1, 2, and 3, why they don't work, what happened with big ag, big tech, big energy, and how we get to the promised land, which I call Web 4, restoration networking. It's all doable, guys. It's all doable. We can do it right now, but we take our power back.
I definitely want to get into this Web 4 idea with you, Mark, in a bit, because again, we're recording on the 1st of November. The election is, your election is upon us, and that's certainly what, you can't escape it. You go on YouTube for half a second and there's, 20 different videos all about the election. So you've already talked about like bots and trolls as kind of one of the main issues with election interference, I think is the term. There's this idea, these concepts of, misinformation, malinformation. There's a couple other ones that that have recently come about that are obviously propagated throughout social media, or social media is the main medium in which this incorrect information, however you want to label it, is put forward to other people. There's one question I had for you, is like, have you thought about who decides whether something is malinformation, misinformation, etc.? I maybe want to tie that into the user ID idea about having a top-down governance force that is saying, okay, you are who you are, and this information is the correct information. And then I think that also opens up a whole other Pandora's box about whether you can trust government and you can trust these sorts of things. So, but I want to let you speak, because you've clearly thought about these things a lot more than I have.
Everybody, there's a chapter in the book called Facts, Opinions, Lies. Who decides? I've thought a lot about this, and this is really, I've been in social media since the beginning. So you add that up, it's like 26, 27 years. I've seen it all, and I've never sold, sold out to the surveillance capitalists for the benefit of my wallet. So, I'm not a billionaire. I'm a regular guy who happened to get into it, who has an ethical perspective on capitalism. So I love capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I love social media. By the way, I love social media. I don't love what it is today, but I love what its intent is and what we want to bring it back to, because the whole idea is to make us as the community of earthlings, more civilized, more connected, more loving, more authentic. So, and part of this is there's a movement afoot in the U.S., and I haven't studied it in Canadian markets very much, but in democracy in general, because democracies are founded on a capitalist economic system. There are what we call B Corps, which are more ethical capitalist enterprises. And there's a lot of great examples, companies like Salesforce, which is a conscious capitalist company also. Companies like Southwest Airlines, also a conscious capitalist company, Patagonia, Whole Foods. I mean, the list is really long, and all these companies really do very well. Now, Tim Berners-Lee, inventor of the web, is one of my advisors, has been for over 10 years. Woz has been an advisor. Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, great human being. Raj Sisodia, a name you might not recognize so readily. Raj is the co-founder of a movement called conscious capitalism. So, and then you've got this B Corp movement. And here's what we got. These movements, these are all about, taking care of your users, taking care of your customers. Now, it's interesting, if you're thinking in your head, but wait a minute, Meta does take care of their customers. Well, you're right. Who's their customer? The advertiser, marketer, political operative, who's ever paying them money to target the user, which is the users are us, right?
Yeah.
We're the product that's sold to the customer. We need to shift that. when we talk about restoration networking, we come back to this idea of, serving your users, and also now instead of top down, because by the way, that's the problem with Web3. That Mark, I'll just, I'll throw a spoiler in there for everybody. There's a chapter in the book called Meet Your New Boss, Same as Your Old Boss. That's about Web3. So, we haven't talked about Web3 yet today, about its decentralized content and it's built on blockchain and its economic system, cryptocurrencies. But we'll get there. We'll get there. It's not all bad, but it just doesn't work for personal social networking for a lot of reasons. One of which is that we don't want to monetize our relationships. And the Web3 aficionados don't understand that. Number two, it's not really a democratic system because whoever is issuing the cryptocurrency actually controls a lot more of the voting power of the currency, and they pretend to. And number three is the blockchain really doesn't work for high volume packets, the transactions, the amount of data that's back and forth. And number four is decentralized content. Having the bits and pieces stored on everybody's computer around the world is a fantasy. It's not going to work. Tim Berners-Lee has solved that problem with something called pods. We'll come back to that and data portability in a second. But, what we really want to have is a system where users are part of the moderation system. Now, Web3 does recognize that, but we need to go further. We need to have a user advisory board. There is a jury of your peers, which X also has a piece of, and so what we want to do is not have top-down moderation, but have, a fact-checking system that's also engaging a user advisory board, which also helps set up the terms and conditions of a site. You've got to give the founders and the investors the control that they need because, after all, they fund the whole project. But you've also got to make sure that there is an appropriate revenue share with all your users. And of course the creators, because a lot of creators, if you're not a big enough creator, then you don't get a piece of the pie. The fact is that you are contributing all the time to the revenues of the site. And also if you choose to have your data, be used to target you with ads and things like that, then you need to be compensated. And this needs to be built into the system. And this is all doable. There is so much money to be made by a social media company and plenty to share because you share the profits with your users. So it's very straightforward. And all these companies, by the way, Raj, who I mentioned, Raj Sisodia, co-founder of Conscious Capitalism, has reams of data, and he's brilliant to listen to, about how and why companies founded on those principles do actually better. Better economic performance across the board. So it's really interesting. So this is part of where we're going to head, instead of this, where the product sold to the customer, we're going to turn it around.
Yeah.
So that's what's in front of us.
Yeah, I think I've heard, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's something like, if you are getting a product for free, you are not the user, right? You are the product, right. Something like that. Yeah. So is this just this? So you're not the customer. Are you thinking that the whether it's these peer groups or having a more, I don't want to say too decentralized because that's more connected to Web3, but some of the ideas that you were talking about, that's how we move away from this misinformation and disinformation campaigns, whether it's from foreign actors or even national actors. I'm here in Canada, and I'm certainly aware of some of the is tomfoolery still a word that's utilized by the Canadian government in order to confuse Canadians on certain issues? And I'm sure, and I know that the same sort of things happen over there in the States. Is really the answer to move away from these freemium type products towards a Web4 platform or industry, and there's no way of solving this within a Web2, shall we say, zeitgeist or industry or framework or paradigm, whatever term we want to throw at it.
Well, wait. But freemium was the only term that was used, maybe incorrectly there.
Okay.
Because Web 2 is not freemium. Web 2 is surveillance capitalism. Freemium actually works.
Okay.
So we need to move to freemium, where you still are served a product for free. You've got to, because people aren't just going to pay. You're not going to get subscribers, though we know subscription services work. We can see it now with Netflix. We can see it across the board in many places. It's finally taken on, and I pioneered a subscription model for MeWe, freemium plus, a upgrade. So in those cases, like the Netflix and other places like that, the subscription service just kills the ads.
Right.
Something like MeWe, and also what I propose for, and remember, I'm not with MeWe anymore.
Yeah.
What I propose the future is the subscription service adds value. So, but you have what you need. So everything you need is free, but then you have the ways to upgrade your experience. And also creators, you give creators tools for free, and creators can upgrade the experience of their followers. But again, it's like, you delight. If you just want the free product, great. We know that freemium works. There's tons of data over the last 15 years that freemium works. And you still can have an ad model. By the way, I have 11 patents, U.S. patents, on an ad model that anonymizes users very carefully and also allows complete personalization. So this is, and you see,
so it's possible that it's possible to have all this happen. Have social media that still connects you with family, friends, and maybe some other people that you're interested in but don't necessarily know, without having the surveillance capitalism and extraction of data, private information, etc. So it's possible.
Right. And also, just to be clear, for any of our viewers and listeners who think, but it doesn't matter, my privacy, it's over for me.
Yeah.
So listen, it might be over for you. To our viewers, it might be over for you because there's so much out there that you just like, okay, what the heck? But we can stop it right now. So that's it for what they have on you. Also, for your kids, for the next generations, we can bring it back. Remember, it's creepy, especially with AI. You can program AI right now to get whatever data you want on anybody, right? And it can just go through the web and collect, if it's a 20-year-old, it'll get from 0 to 20, and this is not appropriate. You want to keep close to the vest what you share and who you are, and because we evolved in life. We're not who we were when we were 10, we're not who we were when we were 15, once you're older and older. So, this information doesn't allow us to evolve because it makes employers think that this is because of something you did when you were 20, that's who you are at 30. Not true. So, we can stop it, and we get civil discourse and critical thinking back. We can fix this. So that's the idea, everybody. And just to put tech in context, tech is young. Tim Berners-Lee invented the web in 1989. That's 35 years ago. Come on, this is young. We are young. Like the printing press took, over 100 years to sort out. Tech just moves so much faster. We can sort this out now. And I mean now, starting now, in 5 years from now, it's going to be different. And Mark, one of the pieces I want to throw in on this segment right here is data portability. Because the inventor of the World Wide Web, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, now has invented something called pods with his engineering team. So they're called solid pods. And this is where we can store our data so that it's not stored in these big centralized systems where, the huge data ecosystem can grab it and, AI can analyze it and the psychoanalysts can analyze it. And we get data pods, we get these pods, we store data, and then we get data portability. So the U.S. federal government is in a lawsuit with Meta right now for antitrust violations. Now, the government just won a case against Google, and we're going to see ramifications of that soon when they make the decision on what Google has to do to allow competition to thrive in the search business. Now, I believe that there will be a result, and I testified in this case between the Federal Trade Commission and Meta, because Meta, Facebook, vastly and grandly, and nefariously interfered with MeWe. from everything that I can ascertain. So, but there will be, data portability is a likely outcome of that case. And data portability will be a likely outcome anyhow, because imagine this. If you don't like a site right now, if you don't like Meta or Facebook, you're a Facebook user, and you want to leave and you want to take your friends, virtually impossible. It's the network effect. It's all there. They can't take their data with them. It doesn't really work. The download packet is useless. And so, you leave, but they're there. And it's really kind of awkward. It's actually, distressing. Yeah. The user who leaves and wants to take everybody. And also Meta interferes with your pitch to everybody. At least in my experience, that's what I've seen. So imagine where everybody can just leave. It's like, oh, we don't like they're not running this right. They're manipulating us. They're bad actors. And so we're all leaving. So then you take a whole group and you download your content. It's all sortable. Boom. We're going to go over to, X. We're going to go to MeWe. We're going to go to Mastodon. We're going to go somewhere else. And then download your content, go over there, upload your content. It sorts. And there you are. That's the free market. So the free market is going to come back. And we're going to see. So this is what's coming. So, and this is going to the shift. So because right now we're kind of stuck, and we need to take action, everybody. And then we might want to talk about, this whole idea of mental health of kids and, body imaging and all that stuff that current social media is just horrific at, the harm imposed on our kids and young people.
Yeah, I think we could spend an entire podcast talking about the harm that's been caused by these platforms on young kids. I kind of see our time is winding down here a little bit, Mark. One thing I did want to get to, it's more of a question posed to you and to get your insights on this. We're using this right now to interact with Meta and these platforms. I don't know if you can see it in the background there. I have the early virtual reality headset from Meta, right? So now I got it right before COVID, and it was very helpful while being locked down and, escaping to, conferences or the woods or, mountains or whatever. But if Meta cracks the augmented reality world and we start moving into a world like that, this right now, the cell phone I have in my hand can track a lot of my biometrics, right? My gait, what the altitude is that I'm at, other certain things, but it can't track my eye movements unless I'm using it. Now I have a little blocker on here so it can't see my eyes when I'm looking at it. But I think if we're all going to be using some sort of augmented reality, virtual reality glasses in, say, 10 years or something like that, 15 years, I think everything that you've been speaking about today with the need to move away from Web 2 is just going to be magnified, I don't know, factor of 1, factor of 10. We're going to need to move away from these things because the amount of data that can be collected on us and then fed back to us in the sense of modifying or nudging our behavior is going to be vastly more powerful than what it is today with a simple, 2D device. Just kind of what your thoughts are on the essential need to move away from Web 2 if the reality of an AI or an AR and a VR reality hits us in the next decade or so.
And we see these in the ads right now. Certainly in the United States, and I imagine Canada, Meta is running in combination with Ray-Ban, who builds the frame for the glasses. Their next generation of these glasses that are not necessarily VR glasses, but they are the glasses that you're now audibly instructing, and requesting and using as sort of both an Alexa and also an information system through the lens. So you can identify who is this, who are you with, what are you doing, where are you? And these are really like everybody's spying on everybody else. This was a problem. And then when you add that into this augmented reality world, I mean, for sure, there's a question of, but if we take the presumption that you're making that then, a vast number of people are going to use them, I think we're going to see very quickly, we're going to see regulations arise around them, despite Meta's massive bank accounts and lobby power, because we're going to have to regulate for the information that's collected. If everybody's, glasses are now, their sunglasses are now cameras, that's really over the top. And and of course, with facial recognition, all the other technologies, that's just a huge, huge issue for humanity.
Yeah.
What it means for sure is that there will be a parallel movement. I think you're going to see this start now. You already are. Even the founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, has built Blue Sky, which is a Web3 but decentralized kind of Twitter. And recently, he's had some good growth. You see Mastodon, one of the early, decentralized social network platforms. You see DuckDuckGo on the search side doing their best, and the only ones who really were able to stay in business with 100 million users, they claim, versus, Google that has, again, billions. So the answer is it's cat and mouse. So, and it's awkward because for our governments, they're usually these white-haired human beings who, fortunately, a white-haired human being today grew up with tech. So that's changing. It's changing. Bill Gates is not a kid anymore. He's probably somewhere in his 60s or thereabouts. Woz is in his 70s. So when we look at, the good news is that the white-haired politicians, which there will always be, are going to be people who were probably tech innovators who, we're going to get closer to that, because moving forward, we need government officials who understand technology and its impact on human beings.
Yeah.
Even Biden was smart enough in this capacity to create a presidential commission on AI and to make recommendations. It's really not well known that he did that. And, I'm not pro or against, president. I'm careful about, my political neutrality, but I think that was a very smart move. A real, bunch of great technology people on the presidential commission so we can understand. And I have op-eds about how do we regulate AI. I've been interviewed about it. One of the things we've seen in this election cycle are deep fakes that are actually ads composed by both sides. See where it's deep fake where they're, in this case, they're actually cutting and pasting words together in a more effective technological way than ever before, when the candidates really didn't say this at all. But, for the viewer, they have no idea that it's really a deep fake that's actually done by the campaign through, much more advanced AI technology splicing techniques to make it look like a candidate is for or against a certain position that they said this or that. And we need to figure this out too, because all that needs to be regulated so we can get back to accuracy, as accurate as we can get. And because democracy depends on intelligence. Even Abraham Lincoln said this. Back in the 1860s, everybody, Abe Lincoln said that democracy depends on an educated population. And by educated, I think we can paraphrase what he meant was a populace able to critically think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that completely. And the deepfake thing is fascinating. If we move into a world where people, you can still sort of tell in most cases whether it's a deepfake or not, but give it 5 years, right? The next election cycle, nobody will be able to tell the difference whether it's not going to be Trump, but it's going to be somebody else. And the other side is going to run multiple ads, and you won't even know that it's not that candidate anymore. And I think that even if you're a critical thinker, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. And that's a scary world, right? You won't be able to trust anything that you see online. and then I don't know what happens. The fabric of society breaks down to a certain extent, or you just get these counter movements that move away from these type of platforms towards more platforms that are more secure. So maybe that is the event that moves us into a Web 4 type world. I'm not sure.
It's the free market. See, it's interesting. It all depends. There's a new news channel in the U.S. called News Nation.
Okay.
News Nation, and its purpose, its intent is to be independent of politicalization and to provide accurate news. Now, this is where the free market can work if we can vote with sort of like our channels, vote with what we choose to participate in. So, and this is where I think it'll go. But we need a high functioning free market, and this is where the government comes in, because again, the backbone of democracy is disagreement, and the backbone of democracy, the economic engine, is capitalism. But what's happened is, and what happens with capitalism in all these industries, big ag, big energy, big tech, which I talk about in the book because they're fascinating parallels, is the early winners. First year early winner, when you got into Web 2, Facebook became the winner. And therefore, the venture capitalists threw hundreds of $millions at the winner. Just like with Standard Oil and Big Oil, before they were broken up, just like, anything. And this is actually a fundamental flaw of capitalism, but it's mitigated by the antitrust regulations of a democratic system, and America has very good antitrust regulations. They just take years and years to enforce. As long as the free market works, and therefore capitalism serves people, because capitalism is missing a component. This is why there's a conscious capitalism movement and a B Corp movement. The component of ethics instead of everything for your pocketbook. And then the irony of it is that if you're better with your ethics in capitalism, by and large, you actually build a better company, a more successful company. So, and for our listeners, you want to really, I love this quaint anecdote. I have an MBA from UCLA, one of the greatest, business schools in the world. And I got 1C. And I just thought our listeners might like this. Because for sure, I got 1C, and you guys get ready for this. It was in my ethics class. Business ethics, I got a C, getting my MBA. Okay, I have to admit this, all right? I want you all to know this. I'm just coming clean here, all right? Now, here's why. Because when you get your MBA, when they teach you business ethics, they teach you not to break the law. They don't teach you to do better than the law. So you can still pollute that river up to exactly the amount that the law says you can. And I said to my professor every day, argued in front of the whole class, that's not enough. We can do better. We can be great capitalists, and we can do the right thing. I got to see.
You're going against the powers that be, and that's and then you're cut down. That's usually what happens, right, Mark?
That's a badge of honor. I love it.
Yeah.
Because listen, we can all do better, right? And we want to remember that the earth depends on us, and humanity depends on us to be good citizens. And that doesn't mean you can't make a boatload of money. I love capitalism. It just means let's serve the people and let's do it ethically, and everybody will love us. That's the real premise of capitalism. Delight your customers, and then they'll take care of you.
Well, I don't think there's a better way to end the podcast than on that note, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll, of course, have the book up in the show notes. And there's a tremendous amount of places where you've written or given other interviews, and I'll have a number of those links up on the show notes as well. Thanks again. I think it's a very, as I said at the very beginning of this podcast, it's a essential discussion to be having, and hopefully the listeners get at the very least one new idea that kind of demystifies a little bit what's going on in our modern day, which is, I think about this all the time, is just getting crazier and crazier, and it's especially with this whole new AI wave, it's almost, or it is impossible for any one person to understand everything that's going on right now. So thanks for coming on to demystify and clarify some of the ideas of things that are going on. If you want to leave the audience with kind of one final thought, or where else they can follow you, or check out MeWe or LinkedIn, etc. Happy to let you have that.
Happy to. Guys, first of all, there's punch lists throughout this book on what you can do right now. Restoring Our Sanity Online. What you can do right. So, you will feel empowered and happy. And like I said, you'll love the stories. There's 400 and something footnotes in there. Everything is well documented. You can follow me on X. I just resurrected the X account so that we can promote, because I'm interviewed, like even today. I have an op-ed in Newsweek today. I'll have an op-ed on The Hill tomorrow. I'm interviewed a lot. I'm speaking in front of 15,000 people in Europe in 2 weeks at Web Summit.
Nice.
You can email me, Mark, and you can see my website, markweinsteininventor.com. It's WEINSTEIN and MARK, different than our host. markweinsteininventor.com. And if you pick up the book, please, and it's available on Kindle right now as well, please pop a review in. The reviews are very helpful for Amazon's algorithm to circulate, to promote the book. And, for our listeners, I don't get rich writing a book. So this book, unless you're, you sell millions and millions of copies, we want to get the word out. We want to get this discussion started. We want to empower people. We want to take our power back. So please, buy the book for your friends, get everybody, talking about it, and let's take some action. And thank you, Mark, heartfelt thanks for the opportunity to talk with everybody today.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time and insights, Mark. It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Cheers.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.